The desert wind howled across the empty landscape as David stared at his computer screen. For the 100th time that night, working at the Space Research Center wasn't exactly what he dreamed of when he was a kid, but it paid the bills and gave him something to focus on after losing his wife 2 years ago. The clock on his desk showed to 47 a.m., another sleepless night at the observatory. His partner Lisa had gone home hours ago, leaving him alone with the endless static of deep space. That's when he saw it, a signal unlike anything he'd ever encountered. The pattern was too perfect to be natural, too organized to be random cosmic noise. David's hands trembled as he adjusted the equipment, trying to get a clearer reading. Whatever was sending this signal was moving fast, and it was heading directly toward Earth. He should have called his supervisor immediately, should have followed protocol and reported the discovery. But something held him back. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the loneliness that had been eating at him for months. Or maybe it was just the scientist in him that needed to know more. Before letting the government take over, the signal grew stronger by the minute. David tracked its path across the night sky, watching as it descended through the atmosphere like a falling star. But this star didn't burn out. Instead, it slowed down and changed direction, moving with purpose toward the hills behind the research station. Against every rule in the book, David grabbed his jacket and flashlight. He left through the back exit, making sure no one would see him leave. The desert was cold at night, and his breath formed small clouds as he walked toward the crash site. What he found defied everything he thought he knew about the universe. The craft was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. It wasn't metal or plastic or anything from Earth. The surface seemed to shift and change color like water reflecting moonlight. Steam rose from where it had touched the ground. But there was no fire or explosion, just silence. David approached. Carefully, his flashlight beam dancing across the strange material. Up close, he could see that part of the craft had opened, creating a doorway that glowed with soft blue light. His scientific mind screamed at him to run, to call for help, to do anything but step closer. But his heart pushed him forward. That's when she appeared. The being that emerged from the craft looked almost human, but not quite. She was tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow from within. Her hair moved like it was floating underwater, even though there was no breeze. But it was her eyes that stopped David cold. They were the color of deep space, filled with stars and sadness and something that looked almost like hope. She stumbled as she stepped out of the craft, clearly injured. Without thinking, David dropped his flashlight and rushed to help her. The moment his hands touched her arm, the world exploded into light and color and sensation. Suddenly, he wasn't just David anymore. He was her, feeling her pain and fear and desperate need for help. He saw flashes of her world, beautiful cities floating among the stars, destroyed by war. He felt her journey across the galaxy, running from something terrible, and underneath it all, he felt her surprise at finding kindness in this strange new place. The connection lasted only seconds, but it changed everything when the light faded, and David found himself back in his own mind. The being was looking at him with wonder. She opened her mouth and spoke, but the words came directly into his thoughts. "You can hear me," her voice whispered in his mind, soft and musical. "I didn't know your species had this ability." David's mouth went dry. This was impossible. Aliens didn't exist. Telepathy was science fiction. But he was living it, experiencing it, and couldn't deny what was happening. "Are you hurt?" he managed to say out loud, though he somehow knew she would understand. "My ship was damaged in the escape," she replied. Still speaking directly to his thoughts, "The healing systems failed during entry into your atmosphere. I need time to recover, but I cannot stay here in the open. Your people, they are not ready for contact." David looked back toward the research station, then at the incredible being standing before him. Every logical part of his brain told him to report this immediately. This was the discovery of the century, maybe the most important moment in human history. But looking into her star-filled eyes, seeing the trust and vulnerability there, he made a choice that would change both their lives forever. "There's an old storage building behind the station," he heard himself saying. It's been abandoned for years. No one ever goes there. You could hide while you heal. Her relief washed over him through their mental connection, followed by something that felt like gratitude mixed with surprise. Why would you help me? She asked. You know nothing about me or my people. David thought about his empty house, his lonely nights, the way he'd been just going through the motions since his wife died. Then he looked at this amazing being who had traveled across the stars and crashed into his ordinary life. Because you're hurt, he said simply, and because I think we both need help. The being studied his face for a long moment. Then something that might have been a smile crossed her features. My name is Zara, she said, and hearing it felt like music in his mind. And I think you might be right. As David helped Zara toward the abandoned building, he had no idea that their meeting would soon drag Earth into an intergalactic war. He didn't know that their growing connection would make him a target for alien hunters. All he knew was that, for the first time in 2 years, he didn't feel completely alone in the universe. The signal that had brought them together was still broadcasting, reaching out across the galaxy. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, something was listening. Something that would stop at nothing to find Zara and destroy anyone who tried to protect her. But that night, as David made a bed for his unexpected guest in the dusty storage room, all he could think about was how her presence had already begun to heal something broken inside his heart. Whatever came next, he knew his life would never be ordinary again. 3 weeks had passed since David first met Zara in the desert, and his life had completely turned upside down. Every morning, he would arrive at work early, bringing food and medical supplies to the abandoned storage building where she was recovering. What started as simple kindness had grown into something much deeper. Zara's injuries were healing faster than any human wound ever could, but she was still weak from her long journey across space. During those quiet hours together, David learned about her world and the terrible war that forced her to flee. My people are called the Lyrians, she explained one evening as they sat together in the dim storage room. Her voice still came through their mental connection, but now it felt warm and familiar. We lived in peace for thousands of your years, studying the stars and exploring the mysteries of the universe. David watched as she created images in his mind, showing him her home planet. Beautiful crystal cities floated among purple clouds, connected by bridges of light. Gardens filled with plants that glowed like jewels covered the landscape. It was more amazing than any dream he'd ever had. What happened to it? David asked. Though part of him already knew the answer would be painful, Zara's mental voice grew. Sad. The Dominion came. They're a group of beings from the outer rim of our galaxy who believe that only the strong should survive. They don't create or build or explore. They only conquer and destroy. The images in David's mind changed, showing the same beautiful cities under attack. Dark ships filled the sky like storm clouds, and the crystal buildings crumbled under their weapons. David felt tears on his cheeks as he experienced Zara's memories of running through burning streets, searching for survivors. I was part of the resistance, she continued. We tried to fight back, but they were too powerful. The few of us who escaped scattered across the galaxy, looking for somewhere safe to hide. David reached out and took her hand, amazed at how natural it felt despite her being from another world. The moment their skin touched, he felt her relief and gratitude flowing through their connection. But there was something else too, a growing warmth that made his heart beat faster. Over the following days, Zara began to show David things that changed his understanding of reality. She taught him about energy fields that connected all living things, about technologies that could heal diseases in minutes, and about the vast network of civilizations that existed beyond Earth's small corner of space. Your people have so much potential, she told him one night as they looked at the stars through a crack in the storage room wall. You just haven't learned how to unlock it yet. What do you mean? David asked. Instead of answering with words, Zara placed her hand on his forehead. Suddenly, David could feel things he'd never noticed before. He sensed the life force of insects in the walls, the energy patterns of the desert plants outside, and most surprisingly, the emotional states of people working in the research station hundreds of yards away. This is Impossible, he whispered. Pulling back from her touch, nothing is impossible. Zara replied with something that looked like a smile. Your species is on the edge of a great awakening. Some of you are already developing these abilities naturally. The connection between us is just speeding up the process as the days passed. David found himself changing in ways he couldn't explain. He would sometimes know what his co-worker Lisa was thinking before she spoke. He could sense when equipment was about to malfunction. Most strangely of all, he could feel Zara's presence even when they were apart, like a warm light in the back of his mind. Lisa started asking questions about his changed behavior. You seem different lately, she said one afternoon as they worked together in the lab. Happier, but also, I don't know, like you're keeping a secret? David tried to act normal, but it was becoming harder to hide the truth. Every moment away from Zara felt incomplete, and he found himself rushing through his work just to spend time with her. One evening, as they sat together sharing another meal, Zara suddenly grew very still. What's wrong? David asked, feeling her attention through their connection. I can sense something, she whispered, her mental voice filled with fear. Something familiar, but dangerous. The Dominion may have found traces of my ship's crash. David's blood ran cold. Are they coming here? I don't know yet, but David, there's something you need to understand. The connection between us has made you stronger, but it's also made you visible to those who know how to look. If they find me, they'll sense you too. The weight of what she was saying hit him like a physical blow. By helping Zara, by growing close to her, he had put himself and potentially all of Earth in danger. I should leave, Zara said, starting to stand up. I should have left days ago. I've been selfish. Staying here because you what? David asked, gently pulling her back down beside him. Zara looked into his eyes, and for the first time, he saw her completely vulnerable. Because I've never felt anything like this connection we share. On my world, we form bonds with others, but nothing this deep, nothing this complete. David's heart raced as he realized what she was telling him. Despite coming from different worlds, despite the impossibility of their situation, they had fallen in love. I feel it too, he whispered, reaching up to touch her face. Her skin was warm and smooth, but there was an energy beneath it that made his fingers tingle. When their lips met for the first time, the world exploded into light and sensation. It wasn't just a physical kiss. It was a joining of minds and souls that left both of them breathless. David felt Zara's love flowing into him like sunlight, while his own emotions poured into her consciousness. In that moment of perfect connection, neither of them noticed the faint pulse of energy that rippled out from their joined minds, traveling faster than light across the galaxy. It was a beacon that would be detected by friend and enemy alike, marking their location for all who knew how to read such signals. When they finally broke apart, both David and Zara were glowing faintly in the darkness of the storage room. What just happened? David asked, staring at his hands in amazement. I think, Zara said softly, we just changed the course of both our worlds forever. Outside in the desert night, the first Dominion scout ships were already entering Earth's solar system, following the energy trail back to its source. The war that had destroyed Zara's home was about to come to Earth, and the love between a human scientist and an alien refugee would be at the center of it all. David's hand shook as he tried to focus on his computer screen, but his mind kept drifting to Zara. Ever since their kiss 3 days ago, the connection between them had grown so strong that he could feel her emotions even from across the research facility. Right now, she was worried about something, and that worry was making his stomach twist with anxiety. David, are you even listening to me? Lisa's voice cut through his thoughts. He looked up to find his research partner standing beside his desk with her arms crossed and a suspicious expression on her face. Lisa had been his closest friend at the facility for over 2 years, and lately, she'd been asking more and more questions about his strange behavior. Sorry, I was just thinking about the data from last night's scan, he lied, trying to sound normal. That's funny, because I was just talking about how you haven't submitted any reports for the past 3 weeks. Lisa said, settling into the chair next to his desk. "David, I'm worried about you. You disappear for hours at a time. You're distracted during meetings. And yesterday I could have sworn I saw you talking to yourself in the parking lot." David's heart raced. He hadn't been talking to himself. He'd been having a mental conversation with Zara while walking to his car. But how could he explain that to Lisa without sounding completely crazy? "I've just been going through some personal stuff," he said, which was technically true. Lisa studied his face for a long moment. "Is this about Rachel? I know losing your wife was hard, but hiding away isn't the answer. Maybe you should talk to someone professional." Before David could respond, a wave of pure terror hit him through his connection with Zara. The emotion was so strong that he actually gasped and grabbed the edge of his desk. "David, what's wrong?" Lisa asked, immediately concerned. "I need to step outside for a minute," David said, standing up so quickly that his chair rolled backward. "I think I'm getting sick." He rushed out of the lab, leaving Lisa staring after him with growing suspicion. As soon as he was outside, David reached out with his mind to find Zara. "What's happening?" he thought to her. "They're here," came her terrified response. "The Dominion scouts. I can sense them in your planet's atmosphere." David looked up at the clear blue sky, seeing nothing but normal clouds and a few contrails from passenger planes. But through Zara's enhanced senses, he could feel something else, a dark presence moving high above, hidden from human detection. "How many?" he asked. "3 scout ships. Staying in your upper atmosphere. They're scanning for my energy signature, but so far they can't pinpoint my exact location. The connection between us is confusing their sensors." David felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert wind. "What do we do?" "We need to leave. Tonight, if they lock onto my position, they'll send ground forces, and your people will be caught in the middle." As David hurried back toward the storage building, he didn't notice Lisa watching him through the lab window. She had followed him outside and seen him standing there, apparently having an intense conversation with empty air. Now she was more worried than ever. That evening, David packed a bag with everything he thought they might need for a long journey: money, food, camping supplies, and his laptop with all his research data. He told Lisa he was taking a few days off for his health, but he could see in her eyes that she didn't believe him. Just after midnight, David made his way to the storage building for what he hoped wouldn't be the last time. Zara was waiting for him, and he could see that her injuries had almost completely healed. She looked stronger, but also more alien somehow, as if the approaching danger was bringing out her true nat. Are you ready?" she asked, both out loud and through their mental link. "As ready as I can be," David replied, shouldering his backpack. "Where are we going?" "Away from populated areas. The scouts are having trouble tracking us because our bond is creating interference. But if they get close enough, they'll find us anyway." They slipped out of the building and into David's truck. As they drove away from the research facility, David felt like he was leaving his old life behind forever. The familiar buildings grew smaller in his rearview mirror until they disappeared completely. "Zara," he said as they headed into the empty desert, "what exactly are we running from? I mean, what do these Dominion forces actually want?" Zara was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the star-filled sky. "They want to eliminate every trace of my people from the galaxy. But more than that, they fear what we represent, which is evolution, growth, the possibility that different species can work together instead of trying to destroy each other. The bond between us proves that barriers between worlds can be broken down. That terrifies them." David felt a surge of protectiveness flow through him. The idea that anyone would want to hurt Zara filled him with a rage he'd never experienced before. They drove for hours through the empty landscape, following back roads and avoiding main highways. Just before dawn, they stopped at an abandoned gas station to rest and plan their next move. "David," Zara said suddenly, her mental voice sharp with alarm, "something's wrong." "I can sense." She never finished the sentence. Bright lights flooded the area around the gas station, and David looked up to see 3 dark shapes hovering silently above them. The Dominion scouts had found them. "Get down," Zara shouted. grabbing David and pulling him behind his truck just as beams of energy started raining down from above. The abandoned gas station exploded in a ball of fire, and David felt the heat wash over them even from their hiding spot. This wasn't some science fiction movie. This was real, and they were about to die. "Can you fight them?" David asked, trying to stay calm despite the terror coursing through his veins. "Not alone," Zara replied, "but together we might have a chance." She reached for his hand, and the moment their skin touched, David felt power flowing through him unlike anything he'd ever experienced. The mental connection between them blazed like fire, and suddenly he could sense the aliens in the ships above them. "Focus on the center ship," Zara's voice echoed in his mind. "Channel everything you feel for me, all the love and protection, and direct it upward." David didn't understand what she meant, but he did as she asked. He thought about how much Zara meant to him, how she had brought light back into his dark world, and how he would do anything to keep her safe. That energy built up inside him like pressure in a volcano, and then Zara helped him release it all at once. A pulse of pure energy shot up from their joined hands, striking the center scout ship. The alien craft wobbled in the air, then crashed into the desert with a tremendous explosion. The other two ships immediately retreated, disappearing into the pre-dawn sky. David stared at his hands in amazement. "How do we do that?" "Love," Zara said simply. "It's more powerful than any weapon they have." "But David, this is just the beginning. Now they know for certain that I'm here, and they know that humans can be bonded with my people. They'll send everything they have." As they climbed back into the truck and continued their escape into the desert, David realized that their love story had just become something much bigger. The war that destroyed Zara's world was coming to Earth, and somehow, the connection between a lonely scientist and an alien refugee was going to be at the center of humanity's greatest challenge. Behind them, smoke rose from the crashed scout ship, and somewhere in the darkness above, larger vessels were already being summoned. The real battle was about to begin. The first sign that something was wrong came on the morning news. Weather reporters across the country were puzzled by strange atmospheric readings that didn't match any known weather patterns. What looked like storm clouds were appearing over major cities, but they weren't moving with the wind and they weren't producing any rain. David and Zara had been hiding in an abandoned mining camp in the Nevada mountains for 5 days. Since their encounter with the scout ships, they watched the news reports on David's laptop, and Zara's face grew pale as she recognized what the reporters were describing. "Those aren't clouds," she whispered, her mental voice filled with dread. "Those are Dominion motherships preparing to deckload." David felt his stomach drop. "How many ships are we talking about?" "From what I can sense, at least 20 major vessels. They're positioning themselves over your largest population centers." Zara closed her eyes and reached out with her enhanced senses. "New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, London, Tokyo. They're everywhere." On the laptop screen, the news anchor was interviewing a meteorologist who looked completely baffled. Behind them, time-lapse footage showed the mysterious clouds growing larger and darker over downtown Manhattan. "We need to warn someone," David said, reaching for his phone. "Who would believe us?" Zara asked sadly. "And even if they did, what could your military do against technology that's thousands of years ahead of yours?" As if in answer to her question, the laptop screen suddenly went white with static. When the image came back, they were looking at something that made David's blood run cold. The mysterious clouds over New York had vanished, revealing massive ships that looked like dark metal cities floating in the sky. People on the streets below were pointing and screaming, running in all directions as the impossible sight registered in their minds. Within minutes, every news channel was broadcasting the same terrifying images from cities around the world. "This is really happening," David said, more to himself than to Zara. The ships didn't attack immediately. Instead, they just hung there, in the sky like giant storm clouds, casting shadows over the cities below. But David could feel Zara's growing anxiety through their connection, and he knew this was just the calm before the storm. "They're scanning," Zara explained, "looking for me and any other Lyrian refugees who might be hiding on your planet." They won't start the main assault until they've located all of us. How long do we have? Not long. Maybe hours. That's when David's phone started ringing. The caller ID showed Lisa's name, and his heart clenched as he realized she was probably at the research facility, right in the path of whatever was coming. David, thank God you answered. Lisa's voice was shaky with fear. Are you seeing this? The whole world's gone crazy. There are alien ships everywhere, and the government's telling everyone to stay indoors. Lisa, you need to get away from the research station, David said urgently. Get in your car and drive as far from any city as you can. What? David, what's going on? How do you know about this? Before David could answer, Zara suddenly grabbed his arm. They found other refugees, she said, her mental voice filled with pain. I can feel them. There are others like me hidden around your world, and the Dominion is hunting them down. Through their connection, David experienced flashes of what Zara was sensing. Lyrian refugees in hiding places across Earth, some alone, some with human companions who had formed bonds similar to the one he shared with Zara. He felt their terror as Dominion soldiers tracked them down, and he felt their desperate attempts to fight back. There are others like us? David asked. Not many, but yes. Some of my people escaped to Earth before I did. A few have formed connections with humans, though none as strong as ours. David felt a surge of hope. Then we're not alone in this fight. On the laptop screen, the news was getting worse by the minute. The alien ships had begun releasing smaller craft that were heading toward the ground. Military jets scrambled to intercept them, but their weapons seemed to have no effect on the alien technology. David, are you still there? Lisa's voice came through the phone, sounding more frightened by the second. I'm here, David said. Lisa, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to believe it. Over the next few minutes, David quickly explained everything that had happened over the past month. Finding Zara, their growing connection, and the war that had followed her to Earth. He expected Lisa to think he'd lost his mind, but instead, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. The secret you've been keeping, Lisa finally said. It's her, isn't it? The alien woman you've been hiding. How did you, David? I've known you for years. I could tell you were in love with someone, but I couldn't figure out who. And all those strange abilities you've been developing. It makes sense now. Zara took the phone from David's hand. Lisa, she said, speaking out loud in her musical voice. I'm sorry we didn't trust you sooner. David spoke of you often. He considers you family. There was another pause. Then Lisa's voice came back, steadier now. Okay, this is insane, but I believe you. What do we do now? We fight back, Zara said simply. The Dominion thinks your people are weak because you haven't developed advanced technology yet, but they don't understand the power of human emotion and connection. When humans and Lyrians work together, we become stronger than either species alone. Over the next several hours, Zara used her abilities to reach out to the other refugees and their human companions. Slowly, a network of resistance began to form. David found himself at the center of it. Using his connection with Zara to coordinate with the others, there was Jake, a park ranger in Colorado who had bonded with a Lyrian healer named Kira. There was Maya, a teacher in Florida whose connection with a Lyrian scientist had given her incredible knowledge of their technology. One by one, they linked their minds across the distance, creating a web of consciousness that the Dominion couldn't detect or understand. They're getting ready to attack the cities, Zara announced as she monitored the alien ships. We need to act now. What can we do against ships that size? David asked. We don't fight the ships, Zara explained. We fight their ability to coordinate. The Dominion relies on a central command network to control their forces. If we can disrupt that network using our combined psychic abilities, their ships will become confused and vulnerable. It was a desperate plan, but it was their only chance. As the sun set over the Nevada mountains, David joined hands with Zara and reached out with his mind to touch the network of human Lyrian pairs scattered across the globe. The sensation was incredible. He could feel Jake's determination in Colorado, Maya's fierce protectiveness in Florida, and dozens of other emotions from people he'd never met but who shared the same desperate love for their alien companions. Together, Zara's voice echoed in all their minds. Focus on the command ship over New York. Channel everything you feel for each other, all your love and hope and defiance, and direct it at their central computer around the world. 23 human Lyrian pairs joined their consciousness into a single, blazing beacon of pure emotion. The energy they generated was unlike anything the Dominion had ever encountered, and it struck their command network like lightning, high above New York City. The massive alien mothership suddenly went dark, its lights flickered and died, and the smaller ships that had been attacking the city began flying in confused circles, no longer receiving orders. One by one, the other Dominion ships around the world suffered the same fate. Their sophisticated technology, designed to dominate and destroy, couldn't handle the chaotic beauty of interspecies love. But David knew this was just the beginning. The Dominion would adapt, and they would send more ships. The real battle for Earth's future was just getting started, and somehow, his love for an alien refugee had put him at the center of humanity's greatest war. The disabled Dominion ships had been floating powerless over Earth's cities for 3 days. But David knew their victory wouldn't last long. Through his connection with Zara, he could sense the aliens working frantically to repair their systems and adapt to the psychic attack that had caught them off guard. They're learning to shield their technology, Zara explained as they sat in the abandoned mining camp, surrounded by laptops and communication equipment that other resistance members had brought them. The next wave will be harder to stop. David looked at the faces on his computer screen. Video calls with human Lyrian pairs from around the world who had become his unlikely family. Over the past week, Jake and Kira were calling in from a cave in the Rocky Mountains. Maya and her companion Tor were hiding in the Florida Everglades. Each pair had their own story of love, found in impossible circumstances, and each had become a vital part of their growing resistance. "How much time do we have?" asked Maya, her voice crackling through the satellite connection. "Not long," Zara replied. "I can sense their backup fleet approaching your solar system. Bigger ships, better shielding, and weapons designed specifically to counter our psychic abilities." David felt a chill run down his spine. Their surprise attack had worked once, but the Dominion wasn't going to fall for the same trick twice. "There has to be something else we can do," he said, taking Zara's hand and feeling strength flow through their connection. That's when the call came in that changed everything. It was Lisa, calling from the research facility where she'd been, coordinating with government officials who were finally starting to take the alien threat seriously. "David, you need to see this," Lisa said, her voice filled with excitement. "We've been monitoring communications from the disabled ships, and we've discovered something incredible." The video feed switched to show intercepted alien transmissions that Lisa's team had managed to decode. The images showed the interior of one of the Dominion command ships, where alien officers were having what looked like a heated argument. "They're afraid," Lisa continued, "not just tactically concerned, actually terrified. The bond between humans and Lyrians is something they've never encountered before, and it's shaking their entire belief system." Zara leaned forward, studying the alien faces on the screen. "I recognize some of these officers. They're from the High Command, the ones who ordered the destruction of my world." "What are they saying?" David asked. Zara listened carefully to the alien language, her expression growing more amazed by the minute. "They're talking about evolution, about how the human-Lyrian bonds represent something they thought was impossible, to species becoming stronger together instead of one dominating the other." "Why does that scare them so much?" Jake asked from his mountain hideout. "Because their entire civilization is built on the idea that only the strongest should survive," Zara explained. "They've spent thousands of years conquering weaker species and destroying anyone who might challenge them. But what we've proven is that cooperation can be more powerful than domination." David felt pieces of a plan beginning to form in his mind. What if we could show them that directly, not through fighting, but through demonstration? "What do you mean?" Maya asked. David squeezed Zara's hand, drawing strength from their connection. "The bond between us isn't just about love, it's about becoming something new together. What if we could expand that?" Show them what human and Lyrian civilizations could accomplish working together. Zara's eyes widened as she understood what he was suggesting. David, that's incredibly dangerous. To create a connection that large, you'd be opening your mind completely to mine. You could lose yourself entirely, or we could become something amazing together, David replied, looking into her star-filled eyes. Something that proves love is stronger than fear. Over the next hour, they developed a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. Using their connection as a template, they would attempt to create a temporary psychic bridge between human and Lyrian consciousness on a global scale. Not just the few dozen bonded pairs, but potentially millions of people on both sides. If it works, Zara explained to the others, every human on Earth will experience what it's like to be Lyrian for a few moments. And every Lyrian refugee will feel human emotions and memories. The Dominion officers monitoring our communications will see it too, and if it doesn't work, Jake asked, we'd probably die. David said matter-of-factly, but if we don't try something, Earth gets destroyed anyway. As the second wave of Dominion ships entered the solar system, David and Zara prepared for the most dangerous psychic joining ever attempted. The other bonded pairs around the world would add their strength to the effort, but the main connection would have to come from David and Zara's love for each other. They sat facing each other in the center of the mining camp, hands joined, as the most advanced alien warships in the galaxy approached Earth with weapons designed to end the resistance. Once and for all, whatever happens, David said, I want you to know that meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me, and you saved me in more ways than one. Zara replied, her mental voice warm with emotion. They closed their eyes and opened their minds completely to each other. The sensation was like diving into an ocean of light and love and infinite possibility. David felt himself expanding beyond his human limitations, while Zara experienced the passionate, chaotic beauty of human emotion. But they didn't stop there. Using their love as an anchor, they reached out to touch every human mind on Earth and every Lyrian consciousness within range of their psychic abilities. For 30 seconds, a farmer in Kansas experienced the ancient wisdom of a Lyrian elder. A child in Tokyo felt the gentle healing touch of Lyrian medicine. Soldiers on both sides felt each other's fear and hope, and desperate desire to protect their families. Most importantly, the Dominion High Command felt it all through their monitoring systems. For the first time in their species' history, they experienced cooperation instead of domination, love instead of fear, unity instead of division. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the approaching fleet, Dominion officers began refusing orders to attack. Some ships turned around and left the solar system entirely. Others requested permission to land and negotiate. The psychic bridge lasted only half a minute, but it changed everything. When David and Zara finally opened their eyes, they found themselves surrounded by news crews, government officials, and crowds of people who had felt the connection and wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. 6 months later, David stood at the altar of the first interspecies wedding in human history. Zara looked radiant in a dress that seemed to be made of captured starlight, and their joined hands glowed softly with the energy of their bond. The Earth had become a sanctuary world, protected by a treaty between humans, Lyrians, and even reformed members of the Dominion. The research facility where David had once worked alone was now an interspecies embassy, where beings from across the galaxy came to study the power of cooperation. You know, David said to Zara as they danced at their reception under a sky filled with ships from a dozen different worlds. I never expected that falling in love would end up saving the galaxy. Love always saves everything, Zara replied, her mental voice filled with joy. We just had to show everyone else how to let it. As they spun together under the stars, David felt a new life stirring within Zara. Their child, who would be the first of a new generation that belonged to all worlds and none. The future was uncertain, but it was bright with possibility. The war that had destroyed Zara's home world was over, ended not by weapons or conquest, but by the simple power of two people who chose to love each other across the impossible distance between stars. And in that love, The galaxy had found a new way forward.